Welcome to the course C# and .NET Programming. This video we are going to see how to create classes and object in C#. To start with, we have to know what is a class. Class is a template to create an object. Then what is an object? So object is a instance of a class. Class contains basically data members and also it contains function members. So to create a class, we need to use class followed by class name. Then you can enclose the data members and function members inside the class. And to create an object, we have to use class name followed by object name is equal to new, then class name. So whenever you use new keyword, that time only the object get created in the memory. So when you use the new keyword to create an object, the constructor will be invoked to initialize the data members of the class. So constructor initialize the data members of the class. So to create a constructor, the first thing, constructor name is same as class name. Constructor does not have return type. Then the constructor should be public. And when you create a constructor, we have the default constructor, and then we have the empty constructor, and then we have the augmented constructor, and then we can have the copy constructor. So this video we will see these basic information through the C# code. So to start with the execution of the C# program, the environment I am going to use is the Visual Studio. I have the version of the Visual Studio 2019. So once it is open, I need to create a new project. So in the new project, we need to create a console application which work with the C# code. So click next, give the project name. So I am giving the project name is exercise 1. So once the project get created, so defaultly we have the project file with the CS file as project.cs. So once the project get created, we have the default main program with program.cs. This is the entry point where the execution of our program starts. So I'll add another one line, console.readline. And now I try to execute the code. So we get the output of console.writeline in the screen. So hello world. I press enter key, so it will come out of the execution. So now I am going to create a class. So to create a class, I am going to create a class called as rectangle. So this I am going to initialize two data members. One is the length and next is the breadth. And then followed by, I am going to include the function members. So I am going to add with void get data int L comma int B. So these values I am going to initialize with length is equal to L and then breadth is equal to B. Then I am going to create another one function which is calculating the area and return the area. So to return I use with the int keyword, and to calculate the area, so the area will be calculated. The formula for area is equal to length into breadth. So after calculating, I need to return it. So I need to use with the return keyword and I am returning the A. So now my class is ready with data member and function member. The next step is you need to create an object. To create an object, rectangle, R is equal to new rectangle, and then I need to invoke the data members. So I am going to just print console.readline right line, I want to know what is the length of the rectangle. So I am trying to access object name dot. So when I use with length, so it is showing me an error. The reason is it is inaccessible due to its protection level. Since defaultly all the variables and the functions are private, so to access it outside, it need to be changed to public. Like that, I will change the function also public. So once it is ready, now I have the length. Then I try to print what is the value I am getting for the length. So when I execute, the length value I am getting 0. The reason is whenever you use the new keyword to create an object, the default constructor will be called and the default constructor initialize the data members to the default value. That's why the default value of the integer is 0. So we are getting the output is length of the thing is 0. So now I am going to use with the get data. So get data, I am passing length and the breadth and I am calculating the area by calling the area function and that result it's returned back. So we store it in a variable and then we use the console dot write line to write the area. So when we run it, we are getting the length and the area. So the constructor here it get invoked as the default constructor which will initialize the data member to the default value. So now I want to override the default constructor with an empty constructor and initialize its value. So when I go here, I'm going to add a constructor to the program. So constructor, I'm going to add a constructor. Constructor is with accessible is public. It doesn't have a return type. The name of the constructor is same as the class name. So after that, you need to initialize the data members. So I'm going to add the length value is 5 and the breadth value is 4. So now what happens whenever I will just hide this. This is comment. So I have commented this line. So now I have created a rectangle. So this time it won't invoke the default constructor. It will override the empty constructor whatever we have written inside the program. So the r dot length will be get printed with 5. So we'll just see it. Yes. So the length is 5. Okay. So now I am trying to overload the constructor with one argument. So I am going to use with public rectangle. I am going to call the argument constructor, that is by overloading the empty constructor with one argument constructor. I am going to add with int length. So when I use it, I am going to represent my instance member also length. The local variable I am passing to the constructor also length. So my program get confused which length represent an instance data member or it is a local variable. So to differentiate it, we use the keyword called as this. So this represents the current instance of an object and this length is the local variable which is passed through our constructor calling. So now we will go here and we will create another one object, rectangle R1. Okay, another object because new keyword create a new memory for the new object R1. So I am trying to print what is the length of the R1 and now I am calling the one argument constructor. So I have to pass a value. So now if I pass it, the length is 10 but defaultly the breadth is 0 because in the one argument constructor we didn't initialize the breadth. So breadth will be defaultly taken as 0. So now I am going to overload with the 2 argument constructor. So here I am going to add both the length and the breadth. So I am going to initialize with the length and then I am going to initialize with the breadth. So now I invoke the object by calling the constructor with 2 argument. So I have created a next object R2. Now it contains 2 values. One is the length and one is the breadth. So this will now invoke the 2 argument constructor. So this will call the empty constructor. If I am not having an empty constructor, it will call the default constructor. So when you override, it will call the empty constructor, whatever we defined in a program. Then the next is the 1 argument constructor and this is the 2 argument constructor. So now I call it, it will invoke the length, both the length and the breadth. It will assign, you want to check what is the breadth value, you just copy, paste. I just, instead of length, I will try to print what is the breadth of the rectangle. So the breadth of the rectangle get printed with length is 10 and the breadth is 2. Now, is it possible to call the one constructor through the another constructor? For example, when I call with 1 argument constructor, I need to call the 2 argument constructor. By invoking the 1 argument constructor, on the way I will call the 2 argument constructor. So how I have to do it? I will create a rectangle object that is called invoking one constructor through the another constructor. I'm going to create an object, new rectangle. I'm just passing only 5. Okay, only 5 I am going to pass and then I am trying to print what is the length and the breadth. So I am passing only the 1 argument constructor. So defaultly it will go to the 1 argument constructor and initialize length to be the first value, but the breadth will be defaultly 0. Now what I want to actually do, when I call this 1 argument constructor, it internally call the 2 argument constructor. So how to call it? So when I create this object R, it will come to the line number 26 and without executing the content of the constructor, I need to invoke the constructor with 2 arguments. So length and along with I will send the breadth. So now what happens when it comes to the line number 26, when it identify the 1 argument constructor, it will come to this line. Immediately it will check with this keyword. This keyword represents the current instance. So it will identify the current instance constructor with 2 arguments and the length value will be defaultly passed and the breadth value will be 3 get initialized. So I am invoking the 1 argument constructor. Through the 1 argument constructor, I am invoking the 2 argument constructor. So once the content of the 2 argument constructor get executed, again it will come to line number 28 and execute the content of the 1 argument constructor. So initially I am giving the length is 5. It will go to the 1 argument constructor. Then it will immediately call the 2 argument constructor. Initialize the length to 5. Breadth is 3. And again it go to the line number 28. Initialize again the length. So the same value as 5. So now my length and breadth will be 5 and 3. Okay. So now the next thing what I am going to do is I am going to just copy one object to the another object. I am going to have a rectangle R1 is equal to R. Already you know R dot length is 5 and the breadth is 3. So this length is 5 and this breadth is 3. So I am just assigning the object R to the R1. Just we are doing the assignment. So now I want to know what is the length and the breadth of R1. Okay, what is the length and the breadth of R1? So when I try to do the assignment, both the object will have the same value of 5, 3, 5 and 3. So now what I am going to do is, I am going to change R1 dot length to 100. Now do you feel what is the value of R dot length and what is the value of R1 dot length? So I am going to print R dot length and R1 dot length. Okay. So now execute. Initially it is 5 and 3. Now you see here the length of object R and the length of object R1 both get changed to 100. The reason is we are assigning one object to the another object. So both object points to the same memory location. So the changes made in one object directly reflect in the another object. So if I change the object R1, it will reflect in R also, because both points to the same memory location. So now I am going with the last type of constructor, that is the copy constructor. So how will you create a copy constructor? I am going to create an object rectangle. R1 is equal to new rectangle. We are passing the object R. Already we know object R containing the length is 5 and the breadth is 3. So this thing we are trying to pass using the new keyword. So now what happened? The object R1 will be created in another memory location. R will be available in another memory location. Previously we assigned, so both object point to the same memory location. Now we are using the new keyword, so each object will be available in different memory location. So here it is throwing an error since I don't have a constructor with the argumented constructor with the object. So I hope to create an constructor with object. So rectangle R. So I'm just assigning this dot length. This represents the current instance. This length I am assigning R's length. And this breadth I am trying to assign to R's breadth. Okay. So now you try to print both R's length and R1 length. Initially both are same only. Now I am trying to change R1 dot length value to 100. After that I am trying to print what is the length of R and R1. So now R will have the length is 5, R1 will have the length is 100. The reason is both objects are stored in different memory location. So changes made in one object will not be reflected in the another object. So now instead of writing every content of the rectangle class inside the same file of our main program, it is a good practice you keep your classes in a separate file. So I just copy this and I try to create a new class file. So go here, add, create a class file. So in C#, the class name and the file name need not to be same, but I just try to create a rectangle. So here I just try to paste the class. Since both are in the same namespace, my program can easily identify the rectangle class which is available in a separate file. So now I run also, I will get the same output. I hope you have a clear idea how to create classes and object in C# and how to invoke the object by calling the constructor and overloading the constructor with different types of arguments. Thank you.